see a sheep, then I got a feast. I'm from the coast, I'm talking the east. I'm talking the beast. We wanna go to a home on the F, y'all doing 100 at least. They know I roll in peace, but they don't know that I roll with a piece. These niggas ain't up to speed, they popping the bean just to pick up the pace. I'm rolling my own smoke, I don't trust these niggas, that shit could be laced. I'm counting my chips, and lace is crispy, eyeing it out if it's ruffle. I ain't from Crenshaw or Slauson, but you know that I hustle. I'm in the
All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brooklyn Boxing Podcast. I am joined by James Power, Ireland's youngest ever professional boxer. Thanks a lot for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
And I think it's only right, on Muhammad Ali's birthday today, I'd love for you, before we jump into your story, maybe talk about, maybe how Ali has inspired you through your career, or if there's anything that stands out, in his career or life that, you kind of draw inspiration from.
I think everyone can draw inspiration from Muhammad Ali, boxers or other athletes, I think just everyone in general. He was way before his time, looking back on quotes, interviews, things he said, his mindset was just on a different level. He's definitely an inspiration to everyone, and he always will be. He's living on past, I suppose his lifetime. His legacy speaks for itself. What he's achieved inside and outside the ring, it's like no other, and he is truly an inspiration.
Definitely. And, we're excited to have you on today. And also wanted to talk about, obviously, your journey and, obviously the youngest boxer in Irish history to turn pro. But as an amateur, you had a lot of success. Why no push for the Olympics or something like that? I think, that was curious to me when looking at your career.
It was never a goal of mine. I started boxing at 9 years old, and straight away, at the age of 9 or 10, I set my eyes on becoming a professional boxer. It's something I always wanted to do. It's the vision I had since that age, and I never lost sight of that. The Olympic medal, people argue is way more is a bigger success than a world title or anything like that. It's an exceptional achievement, but it just wasn't my goal. It wasn't the path I wanted to go down, and I always wanted to be a professional boxer. And when that opportunity presented itself, I seized it with both hands, and here I am.
And that was the age of, you were 17 when you turned pro?
Yeah, I was 17 when I turned pro.
In
Ireland.
Go ahead. Sorry, it broke up for a second. Go ahead.
I was 17 when I turned professional. So the legal age in Ireland and many other countries around Europe and around the world, really, it's 18 years old. So I was in my final year of high school, and I finished school early, grabbed a flight to Los Angeles, went across the border to Mexico, obtained a license, won. It was a successful trip. Came home and I was in school the next day, so it was a little different.
And your trip to Mexico, right? It was kind of a funny story, right? Getting into the bar because you thought, you might be underage, right? You made the trek all the way there, and since you were under 18, you had some worries, right?
Yeah. So I was staying in a hotel up the street from the bar, the nightclub where I fought. So we went down a few hours earlier just to check out the venue, maybe get in the ring, get a feel for the place, and get familiar with it. And when we came to the door, the security guard, the bouncer, he stopped me and he asked for IDs, and I said I was fighting there later. He said, "Yeah, that's great, but can I see your ID?" I said, "No, I'm fighting there later." And he was like, "You're not fighting unless you have an ID." So yeah, I was obviously worried. And then we said I was Irish, and he just laughed and left me in. So it was a lucky escape.
That is. And tell me a little bit about your time, in Mexico. Was that your first time there? Obviously, first time fighting there. What was it like in that new environment, in that new setting? Probably a lot different than, fighting in the Irish amateur scene, right?
Definitely. Honestly, I loved it. I've admired kind of the Mexican culture and the way of life. They're very passionate people. They're very similar to Irish people. You know, they like a fight. They like someone that shows up to entertain. And I had that in the back of my mind. I knew that if I fought the same way I fought here in Ireland, that the Mexican crowd would support me. They'd get behind me, and they'd like what I brought to the table. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed the trip. It's very humble. You're walking around the streets. People don't have much, but they make the best of what they have. Um, the atmosphere in the club when I was fighting was exceptional. The crowd, it sure felt like it. They show me love, they show me support, and I suppose I couldn't ask for more.
Is Canelo a guy that, you draw inspiration from? Obviously, he was a guy who turned pro at a very young age. I think he's 14, 15, something crazy. But, kind of similar path as yourself,
Yeah,
at least in terms of turning pro at a very young age.
yeah, Canelo is definitely an inspiration. He's a fighter I admire and look up to. Um, you know, he looks like he's building a legacy. He's not just in this for money or anything like that. He's an exceptional fighter. He gets better and he grows with each performance. But yeah, he's definitely an inspiration for, I suppose, the start of my story. Watching that man do like what he did and what he accomplished at such a young age, it has to inspire you. So yeah, he started, I think it was at the age of 15, 16. Um, and he's a massive success. He's only 30 years old and he's the biggest name in boxing at the moment.
Yeah, maybe you'll, become the inspiration for a lot of kids in Ireland coming up. I'm curious what the scene is like in Ireland. Obviously, there's a lot of history of fighters, but today, what is the state of boxing in Ireland? Is it thriving? Does it need stars like yourself coming up? What's the atmosphere like in Ireland currently around the sport?
Yeah, there's a lot of fighters in Ireland at the moment. A lot of great up and coming talent. I live in the Republic of Ireland, so there's not much opportunity professionally. There's not a lot of shows. And if there is, it's a lot of small hall events. And I suppose up the north, there's a lot of bigger shows. You have, great promoters putting them on. A lot of Irish fighters go overseas, to England or America, and that's where I'm heading. I signed a contract to move back to Los Angeles, and my visa has been approved recently. So, that's kind of where I'm setting my sights. Bigger opportunities over there, of course. As a young fighter myself, training in the gym, sparring some of the best names in the world. It's going to be a dream come true for me, and I'm very grateful. I suppose I'm blessed to get the opportunity that I have.
And I've seen, on social media and some other sources, you obviously have a lot of great sparring partners, and you've sparred against some MMA guys as well, right? With like Artem Lobov, who's like a McGregor's camp, and I was curious just about hearing a little bit about that sparring, because that's obviously a big trend right now, MMA versus boxing guys. Maybe what that was like. If you could dive into that a little bit, what was sparring like against Artem?
Yeah, so I trained alongside Artem. He's a little bigger than me. I'm only a featherweight. But I was training alongside him. He was in the gym sparring Luke Keeler that morning. Artem was preparing for his fight. Luke Keeler, who fought Boo Andre recently, was preparing for his fight. And it was just to have his experience in the gym. That's a brilliant camp. Pete Trainer or Pete Taylor's the trainer. You have the fighters such as Davey Oliver Joyce, Gary Cully, Tommy McCarthy, Tyrone McKenna, Tyrone McCullough, some exceptional names there. And just being in a camp with that experience, those mindsets, it pays off big time for a young fighter like myself. You just have to be like a sponge and absorb, everything they've learned, and they're willing to pass on to you. So yeah, just training with the likes of, as you said, Artem, and I trained with Mike Perez, who's another big name. Um, the fighters in the gym in Los Angeles, like James Toney sitting outside the ring, Buddy McGirt, my coach Courage Shabalala. Uh, it's just all about taking things from those people, and they had life experiences. They've been in the game their whole lives, so you're constantly learning, constantly growing as a fighter, and it's priceless experience.
Yep. And I guess, like, just to circle back at the beginning of your career, obviously, starting young in the sport, sparring and really getting into it in Ireland, like, at what point were you in it for a career? Was it just getting in the gym as like a discipline thing as a young kid, or was it always, even as a young kid, I want to be a pro fighter?
Since day one. I walked into that gym at 9 years old, and I knew instantly that this was the path I wanted to go down. I came home. I told my mother that, this is what I want to be. She said, think about it, make sure that this is exactly what you want to do with your life, that, you go all in or you get all out. If you're going to start something, you finish it and you give it 100%. And yeah, I focused on it. My whole life is consistent of going to school, coming home, going training, and going to bed. And waking up the next day and doing the same thing. So it's been my whole life now, and this is the career I want to go down. This is how I want to spend my life. They say do what you love, and you won't work a day in your life, and that's my dream at the moment.
That's awesome. And you're sparring, like, coming up, were you kind of that old school mindset, or the people you're around in the gym, like, is there a lot of hard sparring at this point in your career, or are you tapering down? Like, what's your average camp look like now that you're a professional?
Yeah, so as an amateur, the club I was in and the trainers I was around, it was that old school mentality of go hard or go home. Every time I stepped into that ring, it was a war, and I love that. I love getting in and just gritting it out with someone. As I've gotten older, as I've progressed as a fighter, and especially since I turned pro, the trainers have kind of changed my views on it, and my methods of training has changed. It's a lot more, I suppose, skill based. Avoid getting hit. This is about longevity now, and it's about your safety. Punches in the head aren't good for anyone. Um, you know, but then again, you still have to have those hard spars. You still have to get in those trenches and condition yourself, because you're gonna get to that point in the fight, and if you're not ready, it's going to be a long night for you under those bright lights. So yeah, it's a lot less, I suppose, focused on going to war, but it's still there, and there's a time and place for everything. And I'm just learning, and I know my way of training will change going forward too.
And would you describe yourself as kind of like having that Mexican style, that come forward style? Is that something that you want to keep as you move forward with your career, even as your skills progress? If you feel like you can get a guy out of there, you want to get him out?
Yeah, definitely. I've had that, I suppose, my whole. I love mixing it up, and I love to entertain. So I'm not afraid to take a punch to land one and just excite the crowd. That's what I'm kind of focused on. Yeah, you said the Mexican style, but um, I like to think I have a little bit more, I suppose, cleverness about me. It's the defense, and I suppose avoiding punches is a big part of boxing, and a lot of young fighters starting to adopt that, I suppose, approach too, and it's great. There's a lot less injuries, a lot less long-term damage to fighters if they do start avoiding those punches. And that's something we focus on in camp. The defense, head movement, avoiding those punches. Canelo started out with that Mexican style moving forward, but his defense is one of the best in boxing right now, and he still moves forward. So just watching people like him and trying to adopt that and trying to take it on as my own. But yeah, it's all a learning game. As I move forward, as I spar more people and fight more often, I'm going to learn things and I'm going to keep them with me.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting with Canelo, right? I mean, he's like had that classic Mexican style for most of his career, but like you said, really kind of after that Mayweather fight, a lot of people say his skills and kind of defensive game really stepped up levels. And even Triple G in his last outing showed a little bit of a different style with his defense and slipping some punches. Maybe his new trainers trying to implement that, but it's good to see, right? That kind of new Mexican style where there's a little more defensive work there, and not so much just about taking the shot and coming forward, but still that exciting style. So moving to LA now, obviously you're making that big jump, young kid going to a new country and everything. What's that been like, and how, how's that transition been? I know you're in Ireland now, but I guess what are your plans around that? Do you have a team you're going to be living with, or what's kind of the setup for you?
Yeah, so when I finished school, I kind of got in touch with a management, I suppose, a manager and his team in Los Angeles, Ken Shear and Lyle Green. And I was fortunate enough that they asked me if I wanted to come over and see their setup, meet them all, and, start talking about moving forward. And they brought me out to Los Angeles, showing me around. I came home, I was happy. I said I wanted to go back out, and they brought me over for a training camp. And this is something I'm extremely grateful for. They brought me out there to see if this was the life I wanted. They said before we sign a contract, before you dive in, let me give you the opportunity to train and live like a professional boxer for a full training camp, fight, and then see how you like it. So, I'm blessed to have gotten that opportunity, and I loved every moment of it. I went out there. I was living in Los Angeles with a few other fighters. I was training with a coach every day. Waking up, training multiple times a day, and yeah, really just living that full-time professional boxer lifestyle. I done my full camp. I fought. I won. I came home. I went back over shortly afterwards, signed that contract. Um, I have a great team behind me. I'm confident that they're the right team to have behind me moving forward. And yeah, I was all set to move over in 2020. Obviously, the pandemic hit and kind of knocked everyone off course. It delayed my move a little, but my visa has been approved, and that's the plan now moving forward, to relocate to Los Angeles and hit the ground running. Just get that ball going, rolling, and keep the momentum. Fight as often as I can. Show people who I am, and yeah, just start making a name for myself in America.
Definitely. Yeah. It sounds, exciting, and hopefully, everything can kind of get back under control a little bit in the world. Obviously there's still some fights going on, and hopefully in 2021 you can line some up. Do you think they'll be in Mexico, or is that a place you want to go back to for now? Or does it not really matter? Could be in LA, wherever you can get a fight.
Yeah, so the plan would be to be more based in America, fighting on American soil. But
Yeah.
I'll go back to America at every opportunity I get. I love the place, and I'll fight anywhere. So it's all down to where the opportunity comes and what's the right move for us as a team. But I'd like to start fighting in America. I'd like to start making a presence on American soil. But I've no doubt I'll be going back down across the border to Mexico a few times. Every chance I get, I'll go back down there.
And you're 18, right? Or 19 now, so you don't have to worry about getting into the
19 now,
bars,
yeah.
right? You could
Yeah,
stay
there's no
you could
worries.
stay afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome though. Excited for you. And you know, before I let you go, I'd love to just talk quickly kind of about maybe your thoughts on some of the guys around your weight division right now. Obviously, you know, we got Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis. Maybe they're one weight up, right? You're 130, but you know, Tank obviously fought at 130, and you know, got Devin Haney, Tiafimo, you know, a bunch of young sharks kind of floating around there. We don't know who's going to be the last man standing. You know, if you had to choose a guy to bet on, you know, he's going to be the last man standing in a couple of years out of those guys, is there anyone, you know, you would pick, or who are you high on right now, I guess, in that group?
Yeah, so the lightweight division is fire at the moment. You know, they're only a few pounds heavier than me. Um, you know, I have a lot of growing to do, so I could end up in
Yeah.
that division. It's more than likely I will end up in that division. Yeah, there's, you know, they're some of the biggest names in the world right now, and they're so young. You know, at their age, they should only be prospects. And here we are saying that they're the best in the division. Teofimo Lopez, what he done against Loma, I don't think anyone can argue that he's pound for pound. Personally, I'll always tune in and watch Gervonta Davis. You know, he's my man out of that pick. Um, you know, the excitement he brings, even if he's not throwing punches, you're watching and waiting to see if he will land that big one.
Yeah.
Ryan Garcia, you know, he has a lot to learn, but he took out Luke Campbell recently, and that's not an easy task. You know, Luke Campbell, in my opinion, one of the best in the world, and is someone who's just unfortunate. You know, he's got in with all the big names, and they're the only people that were able to handle him. Were, you know, Linares, Lomachenko, they're losses that, you know, no one would be ashamed of.
Right.
You know, Lomachenko is arguably one of the most skilled fighters ever. Yeah, and then you have Devin Haney, who hasn't, I suppose, showed everyone what he can do yet against a big name, but you know that could happen in time. I think if it was a last man standing, I'm going for Gervonta Davis. I'm backing him. But I think the final will be Davis and Lopez, and that's a fight I really want to see.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a ton of matchups there that are really exciting. And it is an interesting, I mean, we could talk about this all day, honestly, but it's a really interesting kind of mix because a lot of people are already basically threw Lomachenko out. Like he's, you know, he's an afterthought almost now.
Yeah,
It's bizarre. Because I thought, you know, if it was the old days and it was a 15-round fight, I think Lomachenko probably would have won that. I mean, he was starting to heat up a little bit. Obviously, credit to Tiafimo, he put on a great performance, but I mean, it was a close fight.
yeah. Lomachenko, you know, he's punch perfect. He's not gonna, I suppose, move in or try and make an impact unless he's 100% certain that he won't get hit. It looked like he couldn't crack the code until the later rounds. Now, after the fight, it looked like he had an issue with his shoulder.
Yeah.
So, you know, if that played a big part, we don't know. But you can't take anything from Lopez. You know, he won the fight. But yeah, people were quick to throw Lomachenko under the bus after that loss. You know, I
Yeah.
think he shocks a lot of people, and he shocked his next opponent because he's not a man to take lightly. The same can be said, in my opinion, for Deontay Wilder. You know, Tyson Fury beat him handy enough, and everyone said that, you know, he was, I suppose, blown out of proportion. He was exaggerated. So I think the next opponent that gets in with him is, you know, he's in for a bad night.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna be, I suppose, put unconscious by Deontay Wilder, and I think the same will happen with Lomachenko. I think it'll be a masterclass, and he'll be back for redemption.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you know, Loma definitely has some fights left in him. And then with Wilder, like you said, man, you're so right about that. I think whoever gets him next is in big trouble. And I still think, you know, if
Yeah,
there's really, I don't see anyone else beating Wilder, including AJ. Just my opinion. I think AJ's a little bit too easy to hit. I think Fury's really
Rigid.
just that
Yeah.
guy that's able to, you know, get in and do the job against Wilder. I don't think
Yeah,
anyone.
100%. I think, you know, anyone. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think anyone that can get hit, um, will probably lose to Deontay Wilder. You know, if he hits you, eh, there's no if, ands, or buts. You're going to sleep. He's proved that, you know, like 40 times or something. So, it'll be very interesting how the heavyweight division plays out, how the lightweight division plays out, and how the welterweight division plays out. You know, you have Bud, you have Earl Spence, you have Manny Pacquiao throwing him through now. You know, boxing's on fire at the moment, and it's brilliant to see
it is on fire. Yeah.
if the
And I,
restrictions ease off, if you know,
yeah. And, you know, I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about this with Manny Pacquiao. I've been telling, I've been saying this to people recently. You know, it's frustrating how people just overlook him. They don't want to put him against Spence or Crawford. They think that would be too much for him. In my opinion, you know, he's a champion in the division. If they're not going to make the Spence Crawford fight, I would love to see Pacquiao versus Spence. I don't think Spence is going to wash over Pacquiao at all. I think it would be a very competitive fight. That's just my opinion. I think people are overlooking Manny a little bit. I want to see him fight one of those guys.
yeah, Manny Pacquiao. I think the problem with him is he's been around for so long that, you know, people always throw the age card out there. No one has the amount of experience that man has, and you know he's looking great again. He's looking sharp. He's looking as fast as ever. You know, Terence Crawford, in my opinion, is the best in that division, and he's one of the best in the world in any weight divisions. Earl Spence, like he's another man that's dangerous. Everyone would love to see that fight happen, but as you said, throw Manny Pacquiao in there, and he can give either one of them a run for their money. In my opinion, Crawford beats him. Spence, I think, takes him out in the later rounds, but you never know what happens. Especially in boxing, 1 point can change it all.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, I think Manny can definitely. I really like the Manny Spence matchup. You know, I just look at Spence. Obviously, he's a beast, but he didn't finish Danny Garcia. He didn't finish Mikey Garcia, although he was dominant. But you know, I just think that Manny could surprise a lot of people and put on a really good performance there. But James, I really appreciate you taking some time today to talk to me, talk a little boxing, talk about your journey. I guess closing out here, if you want to give the people any info on maybe when your next fight would be or what you're looking for, and also, you know, where they could follow you on social media, we'll have this episode out shortly.
Yeah, so I'm heading out to training camp. You know, very soon in the next few weeks. It shouldn't take me long to get like into peak, I suppose. I'll fight soon after that and often. You know, I want to get momentum now. 2020 was, I suppose, a delayed year. I want 2021 to be a year where I make up for lost time. You can follow me on Instagram _ James Power, and that's the platform I use most. You know, you can stay up to date on my journey, and I would really appreciate your support.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. Everyone, make sure to go follow him and follow his career. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, man.